Mother Bear begged for a doctor at midnight. The baby nurse who came forward shocked the town. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The snow fell softly outside Pinecrest Medical Center, coating the small mountain town in a blanket of hushed white. It was nearly midnight, and Nurse Lily Morgan sat alone at the reception desk, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. At 24, she was the youngest nurse in the clinic, only 6 months into her first job after graduation. Tonight was supposed to be quiet, just a routine overnight shift in a town where emergencies were rare and predictable. The old building creaked and groaned as wind whistled through the pines. Lily sipped her lukewarm coffee and gazed out the frosted windows into the darkness. The clinic was the only place still awake in Pinecrest, its soft yellow light spilling onto the untouched snow outside. In the distance, the mountains stood like silent guardians, their peaks lost in clouds. The sound came without warning, a low, mournful cry, not quite human, yet filled with unmistakable anguish. Lily froze, her coffee cup suspended halfway to her lips. The cry came again, followed by a heavy thump against the clinic's front door. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly rose from her chair. Dr. Bennett wouldn't arrive until morning. The nearest hospital was 30 miles away, down winding mountain roads now coated in ice. Whatever waited outside, she would face it alone. "Hello?" Lily called, her voice smaller than she intended. "Is someone there?" The only response was another cry, louder now, more desperate. Lily reached for her phone, but the screen showed no service. The snowstorm had knocked out the cell towers again. Her fingers trembled as she approached the door, guided only by the dim emergency lights that lined the hallway. Through the small window in the door, Lily caught a glimpse of movement. Something large and dark shifting in the snow. Her first instinct was to step back, to lock herself in the supply closet and wait until morning. But then she saw it clearly, a massive brown bear, its fur clumped with snow and ice, standing upright against the clinic door. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had lived in these mountains her entire life and knew the dangers of wild animals, but something about this bear made her pause. Its eyes, deep amber pools that somehow reflected more than animal instinct. They held something Lily recognized from her months in pediatric rotation: desperation. The desperation of a mother with a sick child. And then she saw it. Partially hidden behind the mother bear's enormous frame was a small cub lying motionless in the snow, its tiny chest barely rising with shallow breaths. What happened next would later be called foolish, reckless, and miraculous. Lily Morgan opened the door. The bear didn't charge. It didn't growl. Instead, it dropped to all fours and gently nudged the cub forward with its snout, making a soft whimpering sound that sent chills down Lily's spine. The cub didn't move. Its eyes closed, breath coming in ragged gasps. "Oh my God," Lily whispered, her medical training suddenly overriding her fear. The cub was dying. Without thinking, she knelt in the snow, just inches from the mother bear's massive jaws. Time seemed to slow as she reached out, her pale hands stark against the cub's dark fur. The mother bear watched, eyes never leaving Lily's face, as if understanding this human was her baby's only hope. Lily gently lifted the cub, feeling its faint heartbeat against her palms. It weighed no more than a human infant, its fur wet and cold. The mother bear made no move to stop her, only following cautiously as Lily backed into the clinic, cradling the dying cub against her chest. "I don't know if I can help you," she whispered to the cub, "but I'm going to try." As the door swung shut, the mother bear remained outside, pressing her face against the glass, watching, waiting, trusting in a way that defied everything Lily knew about wild animals. Inside, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the examination room, Lily could see how dire the situation was. The cub's breathing was labored, its tiny body shivering violently. Its paw was swollen to twice its normal size, with something embedded deep in the pad, a large thorn or splinter that had caused a severe infection. Lily worked frantically, drawing on every bit of her training. She had never treated an animal before, let alone a wild bear cub. But as she cleaned the wound, administered antibiotics meant for human babies, and set up a makeshift IV for fluids, she found herself whispering the same soothing words she used with her smallest human patients. "You're going to be okay. Stay with me. Just breathe. That's it. Good job." Outside the window, the mother bear never moved, never took her eyes off her cub. Snow gathered on her fur as the hours passed, but she remained sentinel, her breath fogging the glass. As dawn approached, Lily sat on the floor beside the examination table where the cub now slept peacefully, its breathing steady and strong. The infection was responding to the antibiotics. The swelling in its paw had gone down. Against all odds, the cub would survive. Lily looked up to meet the mother bear's gaze through the window. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species, a mother's love, a healer's promise. The bear lowered her massive head as if nodding, and Lily found herself nodding back. What happened in Pinecrest that snowy midnight would change the small town forever. The story of the bear who begged for help and the young nurse who answered would soon spread far beyond the mountains, touching hearts and challenging everything people thought they knew about the boundary between humans and wild animals. But for now, as the first light of dawn painted the snow in shades of pink and gold, Lily Morgan simply watched over her unlikely patient, marveling at how the deepest instinct to protect a child could bridge the ancient divide between woman and bear. As morning fully broke over the mountains, Lily gently wrapped the sleeping cub in a clean blanket. Its fever had broken during the night, and the swelling in its injured paw had reduced significantly. She moved to the window where the mother bear had maintained her vigil through the snowstorm. Their eyes met again, and Lily made a decision that went against every safety protocol she'd ever been taught. She would return the cub to its mother. Her hands trembled as she gathered the cub. Its tiny body was warm now, its breathing steady. As Lily approached the clinic door, doubt flooded her mind. What if the mother bear attacked once she had her cub back? What if the infection returned? What if she was making a terrible mistake? The door creaked open, letting in a blast of cold morning air. The mother bear, covered in a layer of fresh snow, rose to her full height, nearly 7 feet tall, her breath visible in the freezing air. Lily fought every instinct to run, forcing herself to stand her ground as she cradled the precious bundle. "Your baby is going to be okay," she whispered, slowly extending her arms with the cub. What happened next would be the first of many moments that would leave the town of Pinecrest questioning everything they thought they knew about the natural world. The mother bear gently took the cub in her massive jaws, setting it down softly in the snow. But instead of turning to leave, she nudged her now awakening cub toward a small pile of bright red berries she had gathered during the night, dropping them at Lily's feet. Lily stood frozen, staring at the small offering. The gesture was unmistakable, a gift of thanks. Before she could react, the mother bear nudged her cub, and together they disappeared into the dense pine forest, leaving only tracks in the snow and a small pile of mountain berries as evidence they had ever been there at all. Shaking, Lily collected the berries and stepped back inside, collapsing into a chair as the adrenaline drained from her body. She had just closed her eyes when the clinic door burst open, bringing with it a flurry of snow, and the clinic's head doctor, Jacob Bennett. "Lily, are you all right? The roads were blocked all night with the storm. I couldn't get through until—" He stopped mid-sentence, noticing her disheveled appearance, the medical supplies scattered across the examination room, and the distinct animal scent lingering in the air. "What happened here?" Lily looked up at him, still clutching the berries. "Doctor? Bennett, you wouldn't believe me if I told you." But she did tell him, every detail, from the desperate cries to the mother bear's vigil to the gift of berries. As she spoke, Dr. Bennett's expression shifted from concern to disbelief to cautious wonder. "Lily, you realize how this sounds," he said when she finished, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "A wild bear bringing its cub for medical treatment. It's—" He trailed off, noticing the conviction in her eyes. "I know how it sounds," Lily replied, opening her palm to reveal the berries. "But how do you explain these?" Dr. Bennett examined the berries closely. Mountain winter berries. Bears collect them this time of year. They're actually known for their natural antibiotic properties. Indigenous people in these mountains use them for centuries to treat infections. He looked up at Lily with new interest. "But bears don't give them away." Before they could discuss it further, the clinic phone rang. The lines were back up. Dr. Bennett answered, his face growing serious as he listened. "We'll be right there," he said, hanging up. That was Ranger Connor Adams. "There's been an accident on the North Trail. A hiker is trapped under a fallen tree. They need medical assistance on site. The rescue team can't move him safely without a doctor present." Lily stood immediately, professional instincts taking over. "I'll get the emergency kit." "No," Dr. Bennett said firmly. "You've been up all night. I'll handle this. You need rest." But something about the call nagged at Lily. Where exactly on the North Trail? "Near Black Rock Ridge, about 6 miles in." Lily froze. "That's close to bear territory, the same area where—" Dr. Bennett's eyes widened in understanding. "You think there's a connection?" "I don't know," Lily admitted, "but I need to go with you." 20 minutes later, they were in Dr. Bennett's four-wheel drive, navigating treacherous, snow-covered roads toward the trailhead. As they drove, Lily filled him in on more details from the night before. "The strange thing is," she said, "it was like she knew exactly where to come for help. Bears usually avoid human settlements, especially when their cubs are vulnerable. Unless this wasn't the first time she's had contact with humans," Dr. Bennett suggested, gripping the steering wheel tightly as they rounded a curve. When they reached the trailhead, they were met by Ranger Connor Adams, a tall, serious man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He quickly briefed them as they began hiking up the snow-covered trail. Hiker's name is Ethan Marshall, 35, experienced outdoorsman. He was doing an early morning hike when a dead pine came down on him. His leg is trapped, possibly broken, but he's conscious. The strange thing is he called for help on his satellite phone, but he wasn't alone when we made contact. "What do you mean?" Dr. Bennett asked. Ranger Adams looked uncomfortable. "He said a bear was standing guard over him, keeping him warm. We thought he might be delirious from pain or hypothermia, but—" He hesitated. "There were tracks when we arrived. Large bear tracks circling the area where he's trapped, and smaller ones too." Lily and Dr. Bennett exchanged glances. "A mother and cub?" Lily asked quietly. The ranger nodded, looking at her with newfound interest. "How did you know?" As they hiked deeper into the forest, Lily explained her midnight encounter. At first, Ranger Adams looked skeptical, but as her story aligned with what they were seeing, his expression grew thoughtful. There are stories, he said finally as they neared the accident site. Old legends from the indigenous people who lived in these mountains long before Pinecrest was built. They believed certain bears were spirit guides, protectors of the forest who sometimes intervened in human affairs. That sounds like folklore, Dr. Bennett said, his scientific mind resistant to such explanations. Most likely, Ranger Adams agreed. But in my 20 years patrolling these forests, I've seen things that make me wonder. They fell silent as they approached the rescue site. Emergency workers had set up a perimeter around a massive, fallen pine. Beneath it, partially visible, was a man in hiking gear, his face pale with pain but remarkably calm. As Dr. Bennett rushed forward to assess the injured hiker, Lily scanned the surrounding forest. There, just beyond the tree line, she caught a glimpse of movement, a dark shape watching from the shadows. For a brief moment, amber eyes met hers, and Lily knew with certainty it was the same bear. Ranger Adams followed her gaze. Don't worry, she won't come closer with all these people around. You've seen her before, haven't you? Lily asked quietly, not taking her eyes off the distant shape. The ranger was silent for so long that Lily thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 years ago, I found an injured bear cub caught in an illegal trap. The mother was frantic, but she let me approach, almost like she understood I was trying to help. I managed to free the cub. He paused. The strange thing was, after that, hikers in this area reported a bear that seemed to watch over the trails, appearing whenever someone was in trouble. Most dismissed the stories as campfire tales. Until now, Lily said. Ranger Adams nodded. Until now. They moved to help with the rescue operation. The hiker, Ethan Marshall, had indeed broken his leg when the tree fell, but remarkably, he had sustained no other serious injuries despite hours trapped in the freezing cold. As Dr. Bennett worked to stabilize his leg, Ethan told his story. I was taking photographs of the sunrise when I heard a cracking sound. Before I could move, the tree came down. I thought I was done for, miles from help, freezing temperatures. He paused, looking at their skeptical faces. Then the bear appeared. The bear? Dr. Bennett prompted, exchanging glances with Lily. Ethan nodded. A large female with a cub. I thought they would attack, but instead she circled around me, then actually lay down beside me, keeping me warm. The cub, too. They stayed with me until I heard the rescue team approaching. Then they just disappeared into the trees. He laughed shakily. Sounds crazy, right? But no one was laughing. As the rescue team carefully freed Ethan from beneath the tree and prepared him for transport, Lily found herself drawn back to the forest's edge. The bear was gone now, but the feeling of being watched remained. On the hike back to the trailhead, Ranger Adams fell into step beside Lily, speaking quietly so others wouldn't hear. There's something else you should know, he said. That clinic where you work, do you know its history? Lily shook her head. It was built on the site of an old healing lodge used by the indigenous people of these mountains, a place where, according to their stories, humans and animals could find common ground, a sanctuary. Before Lily could respond, Dr. Bennett called her over to help with Ethan's stretcher. But as they loaded the injured hiker into the ambulance, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the night's events were part of something larger, something that had been unfolding in these mountains long before she arrived. Back at the clinic, as they settled Ethan into a bed to await transport to the larger hospital in the valley, news of the morning's events had already begun to spread through the small town. By afternoon, curious locals were finding excuses to stop by the clinic, eager to hear firsthand about the bear that had sought help for her cub, and then, seemingly, returned the favor by helping a human in need. Among them was an elderly woman named Savannah Reed, whose family had lived in these mountains for generations. While others lingered in the waiting room trading theories, Savannah asked specifically to speak with Lily. "I've been waiting a long time for someone like you to come to Pinecrest," Savannah said when they were alone, her eyes bright despite her advanced years. "Someone who can see beyond what others believe is possible." "I'm not sure what you mean," Lily replied, though something in the old woman's gaze made her think perhaps she did. Savannah smiled, reaching into her bag to pull out an old leather-bound journal. "This belonged to my grandmother, who served as a healer in these mountains before there was a proper clinic. I think you should read it." As Savannah placed the journal in her hands, Lily felt a strange sense of connection to the clinic, to the mountains, to the bear who had trusted her with something more precious than her own life. "There's more going on in these woods than most people understand," Savannah said softly. "And now, for whatever reason, you're part of it." That night, after the clinic had quieted and Ethan had been transferred to the Valley Hospital, Lily sat alone in the same chair where, just 24 hours earlier, she had been startled by a desperate mother bear's cry. The journal lay open in her lap, its yellowed pages filled with careful handwriting detailing encounters between the healer and the animals of the forest, including, most notably, a family of bears that seemed to possess an unusual intelligence and connection to humans. According to Savannah's grandmother, these bears were guardians of a delicate balance between the human and natural worlds, a balance that had been maintained for generations, but was now threatened by encroaching development and those who had forgotten the old ways. As Lily read deeper into the night, pieces began falling into place: the clinic's location on an ancient healing ground, the bear's unusual behavior, the stories of protection that spanned generations. What had happened wasn't a random encounter but part of a much older story that she had somehow stumbled into. The final entry in the journal, dated nearly 50 years earlier, sent a chill down Lily's spine. "When the balance tips too far, the guardian will seek out one who can restore it, a healer whose heart recognizes what others have forgotten, that in the eyes of every living creature there exists a spirit worthy of compassion." Lily closed the journal and looked out the window at the moonlit mountains. Somewhere in those ancient forests, a mother bear and her cub were sleeping, perhaps dreaming of the human who had answered their call. And somewhere in the shadows between what was known and what was possible, a new chapter in an ancient story was beginning to unfold. What Lily Morgan didn't yet realize was how profoundly her life, and the life of everyone in Pinecrest, was about to change. For the barrier she had crossed could never be rebuilt, and the knowledge she had gained could never be unlearned. The young nurse who had opened a door at midnight had, without knowing it, opened something far greater. A doorway between worlds that had long been separated, and through that doorway, both wonder and danger would soon come flooding in. A week passed, and Pinecrest was transformed. What had begun as whispers about Lily's midnight encounter had grown into a full-blown sensation. Journalists from regional newspapers arrived, followed by a television crew from the nearest city. Everyone wanted to interview the Bear Whisperer, as Lily had been dubbed, much to her discomfort. "I didn't do anything special," she insisted to Dr. Bennett as they worked together at the clinic, now busier than ever with curious visitors claiming minor ailments just to get a glimpse of the young nurse. "I just did what anyone would do." "That's where you're wrong, Doctor," Bennett replied, checking a patient's chart. "Most people would have kept that door locked tight. What you did was extraordinary, Lily. People are drawn to that kind of courage." But with the attention came complications. Michael Hayes, the ambitious mayor of Pinecrest, saw an opportunity. Tourism had been declining for years, and the town's economy was struggling. The Miracle Bear story could put Pinecrest on the map. "Think about it," he urged at an emergency town council meeting. "Bear-themed souvenirs, guided tours of the healing forest, maybe even a small museum about the indigenous legends. This could revitalize our entire economy." Many business owners enthusiastically supported the idea, but Ranger Adams stood in firm opposition. "These bears aren't a tourist attraction," he argued, his voice resonating in the packed town hall. "They're wild animals that deserve our respect and distance. Encouraging people to go looking for them will only lead to trouble, for the bears and for the people." The town was divided, with Mayor Hayes's development plans gaining momentum on one side and a growing coalition of conservationists led by Ranger Adams on the other. Caught in the middle was Lily, who wanted neither fame nor to see the bears exploited, but who couldn't deny the truth of what had happened. As the debate raged, Lily continued to study Savannah Reed's grandmother's journal, often visiting the elderly woman to discuss its contents. The more she learned, the more concerned she became about Mayor Hayes's plans. "The journal mentioned something called the balance," Lily said one evening, sitting in Savannah's cozy living room surrounded by handmade quilts and family photographs dating back generations. "It says, when humans forget their connection to the natural world, the guardian bears appear as reminders, but it also warns about something, a corruption that follows when that message is ignored." Savannah nodded gravely, her weathered hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea. "My grandmother believed that the bears were messengers. When they reach out to humans, it's because something important is at stake." She looked out her window at the mountains, now bathed in twilight. "The question is, what message were they trying to send through you?" Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Bennett. "Emergency at the clinic. Need you here ASAP." She arrived 15 minutes later to find the clinic's small parking lot filled with vehicles, including Ranger Adams's Forest Service truck and an ambulance. Inside, the waiting room was crowded with concerned faces. "What happened?" Lily asked, spotting Dr. Bennett emerging from an examination room. "Hiker found unconscious on Black Rock Ridge," he explained quietly, pulling her aside. "High fever, infected wound on his arm, but that's not the strange part." He lowered his voice further. "He was surrounded by a circle of those same red berries from your bear. Ranger Adams said it looked deliberately placed." Lily's heart raced as she followed Dr. Bennett into the examination room. The patient was a young man she didn't recognize, his face flushed with fever, his breathing labored. A deep gash ran along his forearm, the skin around it angry and swollen. "His name is Logan Carter," Ranger Adams said from the corner of the room. "Tourist from the city. He went hiking alone despite the warnings about recent bear activity. When he didn't return to his hotel, the staff called us." "How did you find him?" Lily asked, already pulling on gloves to examine the wound. "We didn't," Ranger Adams replied, his expression troubled. "An anonymous 911 call came in with his exact location. The caller didn't give a name, just coordinates. When we got there..." He hesitated. "The berries," Lily finished for him, cleaning the wound as she spoke. Ranger Adams nodded. A perfect circle around him, and bear tracks, the same size as our mother bear, leading away from the scene. For the next hour, Lily and Dr. Bennett worked to stabilize Logan. The infection was severe, a particular strain of bacteria found in stagnant water. He must have fallen and cut himself in one of the contaminated pools that had formed after recent construction disturbed the mountain's natural drainage patterns. "It's the new resort," Ranger Adams said grimly when they had a moment alone. "Hayes's pet project. They've been clearing land at the base of Black Rock Ridge for months. I've filed reports about the environmental impact, but no one listens. As midnight approached, Logan's condition stabilized. While Dr. Bennett spoke with the patient's family, who had just arrived from the city, Lily stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the black sky. She thought about the bear, the berries, the journal's warning about balance. A twig snapped in the darkness beyond the parking lot, startling her. Lily peered into the shadows between the pine trees, and her breath caught. Two amber eyes reflected the clinic's light, watching her. Without thinking, she took a step forward. "Lily," Ranger Adams's voice came from behind her. "Don't." She turned to find him standing in the clinic doorway, his expression both understanding and cautioning. "She's out there," Lily whispered. "I know," he replied, coming to stand beside her. "But something's wrong. This isn't normal behavior even for her." "The resort," Lily said suddenly, pieces connecting in her mind. "That's what this is about, isn't it? The construction is threatening their home." Ranger Adams was quiet for a moment. "Not just their home. That land contains some of the oldest forest in these mountains, including several medicinal plant species found nowhere else. Species mentioned in Savannah's grandmother's journal as being sacred to the indigenous people who lived here. Including the winterberries," Lily realized. "Exactly. The same berries that saved the cub and that were placed around Logan Carter." He sighed heavily. "Hayes has been pushing this resort for years, promising jobs and economic growth. What he doesn't mention is the environmental cost." Another snap of twigs drew their attention back to the forest's edge. The bear was gone, but something else caught Lily's eye. A small cluster of red berries on the ground where the bear had stood. "She left these," Lily said, kneeling to examine them. "Lily, be careful," Ranger Adams warned, but she had already picked up the berries. Unlike the ones the bear had given her before, these were crushed, their juice staining her fingers dark red. "They're damaged," she said, showing him. I think she's trying to tell us something." Before Ranger Adams could respond, shouts erupted from inside the clinic. They rushed back in to find Logan Carter convulsing on the examination table, his fever spiking dangerously high. "The antibiotics aren't working," Dr. Bennett said urgently, working to stabilize the patient. "The infection is spreading too quickly." Lily looked down at the crushed berries still in her hand, then at the patient's infected wound. An idea, wild, possibly dangerous, but somehow feeling right, formed in her mind. "Dr. Bennett," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I want to try something." She explained her theory, that the winterberries contained natural compounds that might combat the specific bacteria in Logan's system. Bacteria that had perhaps developed resistance to conventional antibiotics due to environmental changes caused by the construction. Dr. Bennett hesitated, his medical training warring with what they had all witnessed over the past week. "Lily, we can't just—" "My grandmother would have done it." Savannah Reed's voice came from the doorway. No one had noticed her arrive. "The old ways sometimes work when the new ones fail." With Logan's condition deteriorating and no time to transport him to the larger hospital in the valley, Dr. Bennett finally agreed to let Lily try. Following instructions from Savannah and guided by notes in the journal, they created a poultice from the winterberries and other medicinal plants Savannah had brought from her garden, plants grown from seeds passed down through generations of her family. As they worked through the night, the clinic filled with people, Logan's worried family, curious townspeople, Mayor Hayes himself, drawn by the commotion. Outside, more television crews arrived, setting up cameras in the parking lot. By dawn, the miracle everyone was hoping for seemed to have happened. Logan's fever broke, the angry red streaks retreating from his arm. He opened his eyes, weak but conscious, to find himself at the center of a story even more remarkable than Lily's original bear encounter. As news spread of another miracle at Pinecrest Clinic, Mayor Hayes saw his opportunity. Standing before the assembled news cameras, he announced grand plans for what he called the Healing Forest Resort, a eco-friendly development that would honor the special connection between Pinecrest and its remarkable wildlife while bringing much-needed jobs to the area. "We'll set aside a nature preserve," he promised, smiling for the cameras. "A sanctuary for our special bears, where visitors can learn about the indigenous history of these mountains and perhaps experience a bit of the magic for themselves." Lily watched the press conference from inside the clinic, a sense of dread growing in her stomach. This wasn't right. The journal had warned about the corruption that follows when the balance is disturbed, when the bear's message is misunderstood. That night, unable to sleep, Lily returned to the clinic. She sat at the reception desk where it had all begun, the journal open before her, searching for guidance. A soft knock at the door startled her. Outside stood Savannah Reed, her expression grave. "You felt it too," the old woman said as Lily let her in. It wasn't a question. Lily nodded. "Something's wrong. This isn't what the bear was trying to tell us." "No," Savannah agreed. "My grandmother wrote about this, when humans take a gift and twist it into something selfish. There are consequences." As if in answer to her words, a low rumble shook the building. Distant at first, then growing louder. Earthquake? Avalanche? Lily rushed to the window. In the moonlight, she could see snow sliding down the distant slopes of Black Rock Ridge, where the resort construction had begun. The clinic phone rang, making them both jump. It was Ranger Adams, his voice tight with urgency. "Landslide at the construction site," he said without preamble. "The spring thaw weakened the slope, and all that clearing made it unstable. We've got workers trapped in a temporary building, and more slides expected. Emergency services are mobilizing, but we need medical on standby." "We'll be ready," Lily promised, already moving to prepare emergency supplies. But as she hung up, another sound reached her, the now familiar cry of the mother bear, coming from just outside the clinic door. When Lily opened it, heart pounding, she found not just the mother bear but her cub as well, standing in the pool of light cast by the clinic sign. Behind them, emerging from the shadows, were more bears, 2, then 3, then a dozen or more, their eyes reflecting the light like amber stars. Savannah gasped softly. "The Guardian's family," she whispered. "I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime." The mother bear moved forward, gently nudging her cub toward Lily. For a moment, Lily thought the cub was injured again, but then she saw it was carrying something in its mouth. A small branch covered in green leaves and white flowers she didn't recognize. As the cub dropped the branch at her feet, Lily understood with sudden clarity. This wasn't just about saving one bear cub or one human hiker. This was about the forest itself, the ancient balance that had been maintained for generations, now threatened by those who saw the land only for what could be taken from it. Ranger Adams arrived minutes later, skidding to a stop in the parking lot, his eyes wide at the gathering of bears. "My God," he breathed, "I've never seen anything like this." Under the watchful eyes of the bears, Lily showed him and Savannah the branch the cub had brought. Savannah identified it immediately. "Snow blossom," she said reverently, touching the delicate white flowers. "My grandmother wrote about it. It only grows in one place in these mountains, a hidden valley behind Black Rock Ridge, the exact spot where Hayes plans to build his main lodge. The indigenous people believed it could heal any poison. Ranger Adams added, his ranger's knowledge of local lore coming to the fore. But no one's seen it in decades. Most thought it was extinct. The bears watched silently as understanding dawned on the humans' faces. This was their message. Not a blessing for development that would destroy their home, but a warning, a plea, and finally a gift. Knowledge of something precious that would be lost forever if the healing forest resort were built. As emergency sirens wailed in the distance, responding to the landslide on Black Rock Ridge, Lily looked at the assembled bears. Sentinels of an ancient wisdom, messengers from a world humans had largely forgotten. In their eyes, she saw not just intelligence but purpose. "We need to stop the construction," she said firmly. "Permanently." "Hayes has too much political influence," Ranger Adams replied, his voice heavy with frustration. "We've been fighting this development for years with environmental impact studies, petitions, legal challenges. Nothing works." "Then we need something more powerful than politics," Lily said, an idea forming. She turned to Savannah. "We need the truth, the whole truth, not just pieces of it." The old woman nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. "It's time," she agreed. "Time to share what my family has protected for generations." As dawn approached, with the bears still standing witness, the three of them formed a plan. One that would either heal the rift between humans and nature in Pinecrest, or tear the town apart completely. What they couldn't know was that forces were already gathering against them. Forces that had too much invested in the resort to let anything, even a miracle, stand in their way. And as the first light touched the mountains, revealing the scarred slope where the landslide had cut through the construction site like a warning, the mother bear raised her head and let out a cry that echoed through the valley, a sound of mourning, of challenge, and of change. The battle for Pinecrest's soul had begun. By midday, the landslide at Black Rock Ridge had become a full-blown crisis. 3 construction workers were trapped in a partially collapsed equipment shed, and unstable ground made rescue attempts dangerous. Dr. Bennett and Lily had set up a medical station at the base of the ridge, prepared for casualties, while rescue teams carefully navigated the treacherous slope. Mayor Hayes arrived in a gleaming SUV, his usual polished appearance disheveled by the early morning emergency. Despite the crisis, he was accompanied by a man in an expensive suit whom Lily didn't recognize. "This is Victor Blackwood," Hayes announced as he approached the medical tent. "Chief Executive Officer of Blackwood Development, our partner in the Healing Forest Resort project." Blackwood's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Terrible business, this landslide. Thank goodness no one's been seriously hurt, yet. His gaze lingered on Lily with uncomfortable intensity. "So you're the famous bear nurse. Your story has attracted quite a bit of attention." Something in his tone made Lily uneasy, but before she could respond, shouts erupted from the rescue team. They had established voice contact with the trapped workers. As the rescue operation intensified, Lily noticed something strange. Small clusters of winterberries had appeared around the perimeter of the landslide area, not scattered randomly but placed in distinct patterns. None of the rescue workers had mentioned seeing anyone place them there. "The bears have been here," she whispered to Ranger Adams when he stopped by the medical tent for water. He nodded grimly. "I saw tracks earlier before all these people arrived. They're watching us." "Do you think they caused the landslide?" Dr. Bennett asked, overhearing them. He had been skeptical of the bear's intelligence at first, but recent events had shaken his scientific certainty. "Bears can't cause landslides," Ranger Adams replied, though he sounded less confident than his words suggested. "But they do have an uncanny sense for unstable terrain. They might have known it was coming." Victor Blackwood approached their small group, his expensive leather shoes incongruous against the muddy ground. Fascinating theory, bears predicting natural disasters. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Almost as fascinating as bears seeking medical attention or leaving medicinal plants for injured hikers. The way he spoke made it clear he didn't believe any of it, despite the evidence that had captivated the rest of the town. Lily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "Mr. Blackwood is a bit of a skeptic," Mayor Hayes said with a nervous laugh. "He prefers science to folklore. I prefer facts to convenient stories that might interfere with $100 million development," Blackwood corrected smoothly, "especially when those stories emerge just as we break ground." The accusation hung in the air, unspoken but clear, that Lily, Ranger Adams, and possibly others were orchestrating an elaborate hoax to stop the resort. Before anyone could respond, a commotion from the rescue team drew their attention. They had reached the trapped workers and were beginning to bring them out. Lily and Dr. Bennett rushed to help, the tense conversation temporarily forgotten. Hours later, with the workers safely evacuated and the immediate crisis resolved, Lily returned to the clinic exhausted. To her surprise, Savannah Reed was waiting for her, along with a tall, distinguished man with copper skin and silver-streaked black hair tied back in a long braid. "Lily, this is Avery Johnson," Savannah introduced them. "He's an elder from the Nishka Tribal Council. I called him after what happened last night." Avery's handshake was warm, his dark eyes kind but evaluating. "Savannah tells me you've met our guardian bears," he said, his voice deep and melodious, "and that you've been entrusted with certain knowledge." For the next hour, sitting in the clinic's small break room, Avery shared stories passed down through generations of his people. Stories of the sacred relationship between humans and bears in these mountains, of the healing plants that grew nowhere else on Earth, and of the dire consequences when that relationship was violated. The last time the Guardians revealed themselves this way was in 1932, he explained, when a logging company tried to clear-cut the Sacred Valley. The bears led children from the logging camp to a hidden cave filled with ancient rock paintings showing the true history of these mountains. "What happened?" Lily asked, captivated. "The logging was stopped after a series of unexplainable events," Avery said carefully. "The equipment failed. Men got lost in clear weather. Some claimed to see impossible things in the forest. And now they're revealing themselves again," Savannah added, "because of the resort." Avery nodded gravely. "The land behind Black Rock Ridge isn't just any forest. According to our traditions, it's a place where the veil between worlds is thin. The plants that grow there, like the snow blossom your bear friends showed you, exist because of that unique convergence. Once destroyed, they can never be replaced. We need to show people the truth," Lily said firmly, "not just about the bears, but about what will be lost if the resort is built." "It won't be easy," Avery warned. "Blackwood Development has built resorts all over the country. They're powerful, with friends in government, and they don't play fair when challenged." "We need evidence," Ranger Adams said, having arrived during their conversation. "Scientific evidence that the land has unique ecological value, something even Blackwood can't ignore." "And we need to find the Sacred Valley," Savannah added. "If the snow blossom still grows there, it could be classified as an endangered species habitat. That would force them to stop construction." Lily took a deep breath, knowing what she needed to do but fearing it nonetheless. "We need the bears to show us." That night, under a cloudy sky that threatened rain, Lily returned to the spot where the bears had gathered the previous evening. She went alone, despite the others' concerns, carrying only a small backpack with water, a first aid kit, and the journal. "If I'm right," she had told them, "they won't hurt me. They've been trying to communicate with us all along." Now, standing at the edge of the forest, Lily felt less certain. The trees loomed dark and impenetrable, the familiar world of the clinic and town seeming very far away. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft crunch of pine needles behind her. Lily turned slowly, her heart pounding, to find the mother bear watching her from mere feet away. Up close, in the gathering darkness, the animal was even more imposing. 600 pounds of wild power, capable of killing with a single swipe of her massive paw. But the bear's amber eyes held no aggression, only a deep, unsettling intelligence. She huffed softly, then turned and walked a few paces into the forest before looking back expectantly. "You want me to follow you?" Lily whispered. The bear huffed again, and Lily understood it as confirmation. With a silent prayer that she wasn't making a terrible mistake, she followed the bear into the forest. What happened over the next few hours would forever change Lily's understanding of the world. The mother bear led her along paths invisible to human eyes, through thickets and over streams, steadily climbing higher into the mountains behind Black Rock Ridge. The cub joined them partway, bounding playfully ahead, but always returning to check on their progress. As midnight approached, they entered a narrow canyon hidden between two towering cliffs. The path wound alongside a small stream that sang over smooth stones. The air here felt different, richer somehow, vibrating with an energy Lily couldn't explain but could definitely feel. The canyon widened suddenly into a sheltered valley cupped between mountain peaks. Even in the dimness of the cloudy night, Lily could see it was extraordinary. The ground was carpeted with plants she had never seen before, some glowing faintly with bioluminescence. The trees here were ancient giants, their gnarled trunks wider than cars. And everywhere, growing in white patches like fallen stars, was the snow blossom. The mother bear led Lily to a rock formation at the center of the valley, stones arranged in a circle around a natural spring that bubbled up from deep within the earth. The water caught what little moonlight filtered through the clouds, seeming to amplify it into a soft glow. As Lily stared in wonder, more bears emerged from the surrounding forest. Dozens of them, more than she could count, forming a circle around the spring. Among them were bears of all ages, from tiny cubs to massive elders with graying muzzles. They moved with purpose, with ceremony, as if performing a ritual they had enacted countless times before. One ancient bear, larger than the others, approached the spring and dipped its paw into the water. To Lily's astonishment, the water began to glow more brightly, illuminating the entire clearing. In that light, she saw what she had missed before: ancient carvings on the stones surrounding the spring, depicting humans and bears together, protecting the valley. The mother bear, who had guided her, nudged Lily forward toward the glowing spring. Understanding somehow that she was being invited to participate, Lily knelt and tentatively touched the water. A jolt like electricity, but painless, almost euphoric, shot through her body. In an instant, she was overwhelmed with visions. The valley through the seasons, the bears protecting it through centuries. Indigenous healers working with the bears to gather plants for medicine. The delicate balance of life sustained by this hidden place. She saw what would happen if the resort was built, the valley destroyed, the spring poisoned, the rare plants extinct, the bears gone forever. And she saw something else. A connection between all living things, a web of life more complex and beautiful than anything humans had imagined. The bears weren't just animals. They were guardians of an ancient wisdom, protectors of knowledge that modern humans had forgotten but desperately needed. When the visions faded, Lily found herself lying on the soft ground beside the spring, tears streaming down her face. The mother bear stood over her, eyes reflecting the glow of the water. "I understand now," Lily whispered, "and I'll help you protect this place. I promise." As if in response, the ancient bear that had touched the spring first approached her. In its mouth was a necklace, a simple leather cord strung with a small crystal vial containing glowing water from the spring. The bear gently dropped it into Lily's palm. By the time dawn broke, Lily was making her way down the mountain alone, the crystal vial hanging around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt. The bears had shown her a different path back, one that emerged not far from town. Her mind was still reeling from what she had experienced, but her purpose was clear. She reached the clinic just as Dr. Bennett arrived to open up. One look at her dirt-smudged face and wild eyes told him something significant had happened. "You found it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "The Sacred Valley." Lily nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She reached for the crystal vial, intending to show him, but before she could, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Victor Blackwood stepped out, accompanied by two men in suits who didn't bother to hide the bulges of weapons beneath their jackets. "Ah, Nurse Morgan," Blackwood called, his voice falsely pleasant. "Just the person I wanted to see. We need to have a conversation about bears, berries, and business interests." Dr. Bennett subtly moved to stand between Lily and the approaching men. "Mr. Blackwood, this is a medical facility. If you have business with my staff, you can make an appointment." Blackwood's smile didn't waver. "I'm afraid this can't wait. You see, I've been doing some research into your nurse's background." He looked directly at Lily. "Interesting that you chose to do your training in environmental medicine before coming to Pinecrest. Even more interesting that you interned with a conservation group that has actively opposed several of my company's developments." Lily's heart sank. Her year working with the Mountain Conservation Alliance before nursing school had been one of the best experiences of her life. But now Blackwood was twisting it into something suspicious. "That was years ago," she said firmly, "and it has nothing to do with what's happening here." "Doesn't it?" Blackwood countered. "A trained environmental activist arrives in a town where my company is about to break ground on a major resort. Suddenly, miraculous bear stories emerge that threaten to turn public opinion against the development. Quite a coincidence." Dr. Bennett stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood, I've known Lily for months. She's a dedicated nurse, not some kind of eco-saboteur, and I've seen the bears myself." "Yes, the famous bears," Blackwood said dismissively. "Yet, strangely, no clear photographs exist. No video evidence, just stories, and conveniently placed berries." As the confrontation escalated, more vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Ranger Adams's truck, Mayor Hayes's SUV, and a van from the regional news station that had been covering the bear story. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered, tension building in the crisp morning air. "What's going on here?" Ranger Adams demanded, quickly assessing the situation and moving to stand beside Lily and Dr. Bennett. "Just getting to the bottom of your town's bear stories," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Stories that seem designed to interfere with progress and economic opportunity." Mayor Hayes looked uncomfortable, caught between the town's growing attachment to the bear miracle and his commitment to the resort development. "Victor, I don't think this is the right approach." "With all due respect, Mayor," Blackwood cut him off. "There's too much at stake to pussyfoot around. My investors are getting nervous about all this bear nonsense. It's time to clear the air." He turned to the gathering crowd, voice raised for everyone to hear. "I'm offering $50,000 to anyone who can provide definitive proof that these so-called guardian bears exist, and another $50,000 to anyone who can prove they don't." The crowd murmured in surprise and excitement. $50,000 was more money than many in Pinecrest saw in a year. "This is irresponsible," Ranger Adams protested. "You'll have people tramping all over the forest, disturbing wildlife, putting themselves in danger. Or proving once and for all that this is an elaborate hoax," Blackwood interrupted. "Either way, we get the truth." As the argument continued, Lily felt the crystal vial growing warm against her skin. She touched it through her shirt, remembering her promise to the bears. She knew what she had to do. "There's another way," she said, her clear voice cutting through the debate. All eyes turned to her. "I can show you the truth. All of you. But not for money. And not with cameras or weapons." She looked directly at Blackwood. "If you truly want proof, come with me tonight. See for yourself what these mountains are hiding." A hush fell over the crowd. Blackwood studied her for a long moment, calculation visible behind his eyes. "And if I agree to this expedition?" he asked finally. "If you still want to build your resort after what I show you," Lily replied, "I'll stop opposing the development. Publicly." Ranger Adams looked at her sharply. "Lily, you can't." She silenced him with a look, her hand still on the hidden vial. "I know what I'm doing," she said quietly. Blackwood considered the offer, clearly intrigued by the opportunity to discredit her once and for all. "Very well, Nurse Morgan, tonight it is, but I choose who comes along." He gestured to his armed associates. "My security team, for one." "No weapons," Lily insisted. "This isn't about force, it's about truth." After further negotiation, a small expedition was arranged. Blackwood, Mayor Hayes, Ranger Adams, Dr. Bennett, Savannah Reed, who refused to be left behind, and a respected local journalist named Jessica Brooks, who had been covering the bear story from the beginning. As the crowd dispersed and Blackwood drove away, Ranger Adams confronted Lily. "What are you thinking? You can't take Blackwood to the Sacred Valley." "I'm not," Lily replied calmly. "At least, not directly." She finally pulled out the crystal vial, showing it to Ranger Adams and Dr. Bennett. Even in daylight, the water inside emitted a faint glow. "The bears gave me this last night," she explained, "and showed me what to do with it." As evening approached, storm clouds gathered over the mountains, promising a night of heavy rain. The expedition group met at the clinic, equipped with rain gear and flashlights. Tension was high. Blackwood clearly expecting to expose a fraud, Lily resolute in her purpose, the others uncertain what to believe. "Where exactly are we going?" Mayor Hayes asked nervously as they prepared to set out. "To the old stone circle," Lily answered, "on the ridge above town." Ranger Adams looked surprised. "The indigenous ceremonial site? But that's nowhere near the Sacred Valley." "Trust me," Lily said simply. The hike up to the stone circle was difficult in the gathering darkness, made more challenging by the rain that began to fall in heavy sheets. By the time they reached the ancient ring of standing stones, they were all soaked and miserable. "Well," Blackwood demanded, water streaming down his expensive raincoat, "where are these miraculous bears of yours?" Instead of answering, Lily walked to the center of the stone circle. The rain seemed to fall more lightly here, as if the space were partially sheltered by some invisible force. She removed the crystal vial from around her neck. "What all of you need to understand," she said, raising her voice above the storm, "is that this isn't just about bears or a resort or even a hidden valley. It's about seeing the truth that's been in front of us all along." With that, she uncorked the vial and poured the glowing water onto the ground at the center of the circle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the water began to spread outward in thin, luminous tendrils, following ancient channels carved into the stone beneath their feet. As the glowing water touched each of the standing stones in turn, they too began to glow, until the entire circle was illuminated in pulsing blue-white light. "What is this?" Mayor Hayes whispered, his face bathed in the unearthly glow. "Some kind of chemical reaction." But even as he spoke, the light intensified, shooting upward from each stone to form a dome of shimmering energy over the circle. The rain outside continued to fall, but within the dome, all was dry and still. And then the visions began, like what Lily had experienced at the spring, but shared among all of them now. The visions showed the history of Pinecrest, not just the town's recorded history, but the deep history of the land itself. They saw the first indigenous people arriving thousands of years ago, learning to live in harmony with the forest and its guardians. They saw the sacred valley in all its glory, the source of healing plants that had saved countless lives through the centuries. They saw the bears, generation after generation, protecting the balance between worlds. And they saw what would happen if that balance was destroyed. Not just the loss of plants and animals, but a rupture in the very fabric of the place, a wound that would never heal. When the visions faded, leaving them standing once more in the stone circle under the pouring rain, no one spoke for several minutes. The glowing water had disappeared, absorbed into the ancient stones. Jessica Brooks, the journalist, was the first to find her voice. "I saw—" She struggled to articulate the experience. "We all saw the same things, didn't we?" That wasn't a hallucination. Dr. Bennett nodded slowly, his scientific worldview visibly shaken. It was like accessing a collective memory, the land's memory. Mayor Hayes was white-faced, leaning against one of the standing stones for support. "All this time," he murmured. "I never knew, never understood what we were sitting on top of." Only Blackwood seemed unmoved, his expression calculating. "An impressive show, Nurse Morgan. Some kind of drug in that water, I assume? Mass hallucination?" Lily met his gaze steadily. "You know that's not true. You saw what the rest of us saw." "What I saw was an elaborate attempt to manipulate emotions and block progress," Blackwood snapped, though something in his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "My resort will bring jobs, tax revenue, and opportunity to this backward little town. No light show is going to change that." "It's not just a light show," Savannah Reed said quietly. Her weathered face seemed to glow with reflected light, though the stones had stopped shining. "The Guardians have shared their wisdom. The question is, are we wise enough to listen?" As if in answer, a sound rose above the storm. The familiar cry of the mother bear, but amplified now, joined by dozens, perhaps hundreds of others, echoing from every part of the surrounding forest. The expedition members froze, listening to the eerie chorus. "My God," Mayor Hayes whispered, "how many of them are out there?" In the beam of his flashlight, at the edge of the stone circle, amber eyes reflected back. Not just one pair, but many, watching from the shadows between the trees. The bears had surrounded them, silent now except for their breathing, waiting. Even Blackwood seemed shaken by this development, his confidence finally cracking. "This can't be real," he muttered. "Bears don't behave this way." "These bears do," Ranger Adams said quietly, "because they're not just bears. They're guardians of something ancient and powerful, something worth protecting." A massive figure separated itself from the darkness, the great elder bear Lily had seen at the spring. It approached the stone circle slowly, deliberately, stopping just outside. Then, to the astonishment of all present, it rose to its hind legs, towering over even the tallest standing stone and extended one massive paw toward Blackwood. In that paw was a snow blossom flower, glowing with the same ethereal light as the spring water. The moment hung suspended in time, the ancient bear offering a choice, a chance for understanding, a possibility of a different path forward. Rain fell around them, but not between them, as if nature itself held its breath. Blackwood stared at the offered flower, his face a battlefield of conflicting emotions: greed, fear, wonder, and something deeper, something almost like recognition. What happened next would determine not just the fate of the sacred valley, but the future of Pinecrest itself, and perhaps, in some small way, the future relationship between humans and the natural world they had forgotten how to see. Time seemed to stand still as Blackwood stared at the snow blossom in the bear's massive paw. The flower pulsed with gentle blue light, casting shadows across his rain-streaked face. No one dared breathe. Then, with hands that trembled visibly, Victor Blackwood reached out and accepted the flower. The moment his fingers touched the delicate petals, he gasped and fell to his knees in the mud. His body shook as if with electricity, his eyes wide and unfocused. The others watched in alarm, but Lily shook her head when Dr. Bennett moved to help him. "It's showing him something," she whispered. "Let it happen." When Blackwood finally looked up, tears streamed down his face, mingling with the rain. The hardness in his eyes had vanished, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. "I saw," he began, his voice breaking. He looked around at the circle of bears watching silently from the darkness. "I saw my grandfather." Mayor Hayes stepped forward cautiously. "Your grandfather?" Blackwood nodded, still clutching the glowing flower. "He used to bring me to mountains like these when I was a boy, before he lost everything in the recession and took his own life." His voice caught. "He taught me the names of plants, showed me how to track animals, told me stories about respecting the land." He looked directly at the elder bear, which had lowered itself to all fours but still watched him intently. "I forgot all of it. I buried those memories and became this." He gestured at his expensive clothes, now soaked and muddy. "A man who sees land only for its development potential. Dollar signs instead of life." The elder bear huffed softly, as if in acknowledgement. "When I touched the flower," Blackwood continued, "I didn't just see the history of this place. I saw my own history, the path I turned away from, the man I could have been." He rose unsteadily to his feet and turned to face Mayor Hayes. "The resort is finished," he said firmly. "I'm pulling Blackwood Development out of Pinecrest." Mayor Hayes gaped in shock. "But the contract, the investors, I'll deal with it," Blackwood said, newfound resolve in his voice. "Some costs are worth bearing." A murmur passed through the bears surrounding them. Not quite a growl, not quite a purr, but something in between. The sound resonated through the stone circle, vibrating in the humans' chests like a shared heartbeat. "There's more," Lily said, stepping forward. "Tell them what else you can do, Mr. Blackwood." He looked at her in surprise, then understanding dawned in his eyes. "Of course, my company doesn't have to build resorts. We have resources influence." For the first time, a genuine smile crossed his face. "We could establish a conservation trust, protect this land permanently." "The Blackwood Conservation Trust," Ranger Adams said thoughtfully, "has a nice ring to it." As if in approval, the rain suddenly lessened, and the clouds parted to reveal a sky brilliant with stars. The elder bear rose once more to its hind legs, towering above them all, and let out a roar that echoed through the mountains, not a threat, but a proclamation. One by one, the other bears joined in, their combined voices creating a symphony that sent chills down the spines of the humans present. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they began to melt back into the forest, disappearing between the trees until only the elder bear and the mother bear with her cub remained. The mother bear approached Lily, nudging her gently with her massive head in what could only be described as affection. The cub playfully circled Lily's legs before following its mother. The elder bear gave one final look at Blackwood, as if sealing an unspoken pact, then it too vanished into the night. "What just happened?" Jessica Brooks whispered, her journalist's instinct for documentation momentarily overwhelmed by wonder. "I think," Savannah Reed said softly, "we just witnessed the renewal of a very old covenant." 1 year later, Lily Morgan stood at the entrance to the newly established Blackwood Wildlife Sanctuary. Behind her, a state-of-the-art research and education center gleamed in the summer sun, its architecture designed to blend harmoniously with the surrounding forest. Solar panels sparkled on the roof, and a living wall of native plants covered the entire southern facade. Inside, scientists studied the unique medicinal properties of the valley's plants, working closely with a team of indigenous researchers led by Avery Johnson. Careful trails allowed limited, guided access to some areas of the sanctuary, while the sacred valley remained protected and undisturbed. Mayor Hayes, initially devastated by the collapse of his resort plans, had ultimately embraced the sanctuary as Pinecrest's new identity. Tourism was booming, not with luxury resort goers, but with nature enthusiasts, researchers, and spiritual seekers drawn by the town's reputation as a place of healing and harmony. Lily now split her time between nursing at the clinic and working as a liaison between the scientific team and the local community. The journal of Savannah's grandmother had been carefully preserved and digitized, its ancient wisdom helping to guide the sanctuary's development. As for Victor Blackwood, the transformation that began on that rainy night in the stone circle had only deepened. He had devoted his considerable fortune and business acumen to conservation projects around the world, starting with Pinecrest but not ending there. He often visited the sanctuary, sometimes spending hours sitting quietly at the edge of the forest, watching and waiting. Ranger Adams joined Lily at the sanctuary entrance, offering her a cup of coffee. "Big day today," he said. "First official graduating class of the Junior Guardians program." Lily smiled, watching a group of local children proudly receiving their certificates, each bearing the paw print logo of the sanctuary. "They're the future of this place," she said. "The ones who will carry on what we've started." "Speaking of which," Ranger Adams said, lowering his voice, "there have been reports from the North Trail. 3 hikers said they were guided back to safety when they got lost in yesterday's fog. Said they followed a bear cub that seemed to know exactly where it was going." Lily's smile deepened. Some things don't change. As the afternoon sun began to sink toward the mountains, Lily walked alone to the small observation platform at the edge of the sanctuary. This spot overlooked the forest but was far enough away not to disturb its inhabitants. It had become her favorite place to end the day. She didn't have to wait long. As the golden light of sunset filtered through the trees, a familiar shape emerged from the shadows. The mother bear, now with 2 cubs following close behind. The bear paused in a clearing, looking directly at Lily as if recognizing an old friend. Lily raised her hand in greeting, the crystal vial, now empty but still faintly luminous, hanging from a cord around her wrist. The bear seemed to nod before guiding her cubs deeper into the protected forest. Dr. Bennett had once asked Lily if she ever regretted the turn her life had taken, wondered if she might have achieved more as a conventional nurse in a big city hospital. The question had made her laugh. "How many nurses," she had replied, can say they helped heal the relationship between humans and nature, between progress and preservation, between the future and the past. As darkness fell over the sanctuary, lights came on along the pathways, soft, downward-facing LEDs that provided safe passage for humans without disturbing the wildlife. In the distance, Lily could see visitors gathering for the evening's educational program, eager to learn about the unique ecosystem they were privileged to visit. But beyond those lights, in the vast protected darkness of the forest, another gathering was taking place, one hidden from human eyes but no less real. The guardian bears, keeping their ancient vigil, protecting a balance that had nearly been lost, but was now, perhaps, on its way to being restored. Lily touched the crystal vial at her wrist and whispered the words Savannah had taught her, words of gratitude in the language of the mountain's first human inhabitants. Then she turned back toward the lights of the center, carrying with her the quiet certainty that some bonds, once formed, transcend the boundaries between species and stretch across time itself. And somewhere in the darkness, a mother bear raised her head, catching the familiar scent of the human who had once opened a door at midnight and, in doing so, opened a door between worlds, a door that would remain open for generations to come.